Julien, founder and publisher of Brand.bar's Happy Hour Chats. This week, I sat down with Renée Dodge, one of GoDaddy's powerhouse brokers, to discuss sales and negotiation. Let's dig into that discussion. But first, let's hear from our sponsors.
Serious about online trading? Secure your funds, keep your merchandise safe, and use a company that keeps both the buyer and seller protected the whole way through. That's escrow.com. Payments you can trust.
Today is your lucky day because NamesCon is offering a special St. Patrick's Day sale. Save 50% on your NamesCon ticket registration from now until March 20th. That's a $300 savings. Go on over to namescon.sale to take advantage of this great offer. Okay, everybody, welcome to the Brand.bar Happy Hour Chat. I'm Angela St. Julien, and I am on this afternoon with Renée Dodge over at GoDaddy. Hey there, Renee.
Hi there.
Thank you so much for coming on with us. Let me enlarge this so our guests can see you. How is it over there today?
It's great. It's a beautiful day in Arizona today. I love it.
Good. Is it sunny out there or is it rainy? No, you said it's beautiful, so it has to be sunny.
Yeah, it's sunny. Yeah. It's starting to warm up, so it's going to get pretty hot out here.
Nice, nice. I might need to take another visit pretty soon.
Yeah, you definitely should, especially when it's 130. That's great.
What? Okay, maybe not so soon. Okay, so before we jump into questions about sales and negotiations, let's get to know you a little bit better, Renee. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your role over at GoDaddy.
Okay. Well, I've been with GoDaddy for going on about 7 years now. I've been in the domain aftermarket or domain buy service for going on 3 years. When I first started at GoDaddy, I started in sales and support on the floor, and I always had an interest or a passion for the aftermarket going into the negotiations, or I would get excited when somebody bought like a big premium domain, and I always thought that was really cool, and I loved watching the markets. So when I moved into this position, it just kind of became one of those passions that just got ignited in me, and I've been with the domain buy service, taken on a leadership role recently. So it's been a really fun and exciting, challenging career move for me. So, I mean, I focus on high value, low value, all sorts of different domain buy service.
All right. So, you know what? Let's talk about something here.
All right.
Say high value domains. Well, my imagination takes me to a list of wow domains, and I'm thinking, like, are you still at the starstruck stage when you get some of those really awesome domains come across your desk?
You know, I am, and then I'm not. So being that in this business, I see a lot of really high value domains come across. The ones that kind of wow me is when I get the challenge to try to purchase it or try to sell it. So like for LA.com, that was a huge challenge. You know, I worked on that for months. But, you know, a lot of the big domains that we have come across, I've got a couple people that send me their portfolios, and I'm like, you know, this portfolio is insane and I would love to own it. And it's when I look at them in a mass, or when somebody's collected a bunch of domains and they just have an incredible portfolio, that's when I get the wow factor. If you have one or two that you've picked up over a couple of the years, you know, that's great. But when you see somebody who's like, this is my collection, or this is my portfolio, that's when I'm like, wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, I would be thinking, I can't believe they owned all those. They own all those, and I wish that I had been into domaining then, so I could have scooped some of these up.
Right? Years ago, I wish I would have picked some up. Yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned LA.com, and I guess that leads me into like one of my first big questions. You know, I think it was last week when news broke about the sale of LA.com, and I understand you worked on that one, right?
Yes. Yes, I was one
Yes.
of the main brokers who started out with it. We started out with the research, and I was the one who found the end user for it, and that's a great feeling. I mean,
Wow.
you do a lot to find the perfect home, and when you find that perfect home for them, it's a great feeling. And to be the one to do that was a was great. It was amazing.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, that would be something pretty spectacular to be a part of. How many such sales like these have you been responsible for or have you worked on?
For high value, I've worked on a handful or so. Reaching out as far as like doing outbound on this by far was the cream of the crop for me to kind of work on and sell and be the broker for. So that was kind of good. I do mainly with domain buy service, and I've done hundreds, maybe thousands of domain buy service where I have a buyer looking for a specific domain and I reach out to sellers. So that's the majority of what I do in domain buy service.
Wow. And I mean, a name like LA, two letters, like that's just amazing. Tell me, what kind of process, or like, can you give us an example of your process during a sale or trying to sell a name like this one?
With an ultra premium domain is what we like to call domains like LA. It's one of those domains where you have to do your homework. You have to do your research. What I did with this one is we started out a few months ago and we started our research where we collected a full database of possible end users. And once you've collected, you spend a couple weeks collecting information. Once you have that database of who you're going to contact, that's when you start reaching out, you start your emails, you start your information. So the process starts in the very beginning with doing your homework, finding your key contacts, finding possible end users, finding companies that maybe just getting off the ground. So for like LA.com, we looked at a couple of startup companies and we're like, hey, this could possibly work for you. But, the one thing with startup companies, they don't always want to spend a chunk of their domain
Yeah,
or a
yeah.
chunk of their money on a domain.
And
So, we reached out to, a lot of really, really key people. One of the funny things is when you're doing your research, you have to go through what we like to call gatekeepers. And you go through probably, 6 or 10 on average just to get to the right person.
unbelievable.
One of the stories that I was telling you is that there is this unnamed LA sports team that I got in contact with, and it took me probably about 18 people, I think is what I added up, to get to the contact person. And once I got to that person, they left me a voicemail the next day. And they said, and I still have this voicemail, and they said, congratulations, Renee, you made it to the top person. Yeah, you've got the right one. No, we're not interested.
Oh,
So
wow.
you get all the way to the top and you're like, all right.
Darn.
And then you
Back
go
to
on
the
to the next
drawing
one.
board. Yeah. Well, how do you keep up your morale? How do you not get discouraged when you get like voicemails like that, or I guess those doors close in your face, or those no's? Like, how do you continue on without it affecting you?
Because it's a challenge for one, and when you do your homework, you do have a list of, we'll say like you have a list of 200 people that you're going to contact, and you may go through the steps to get to the right person, and they say no. You cross them off your list and you go down to the next one, and you're going to get somebody who's like, well, how much are you looking for? Or what's the price? So when you get that, there's sparked an interest. So that keeps you going. And the challenge is the biggest thing for me. I love doing it. I love finding that perfect end user, because you have to be like, this is what we are offering you. For LA.com, whoever ended up with that, we all know, or we all will know who ended up with it, but it's going to be huge. It's going to be fabulous for them. It's going to set so many new boundaries and new opportunities. It's going to set for LA, and it went to the right place.
And you know what, too, you as the person who worked on this will get such a great satisfaction every time you see it, let's say, on a billboard or on a commercial, or you go to it online and you see this thing that started out as a little seedling that you planted and it's become this big business. I know that must be another part that gives you some, I guess some motivation to keep doing this every day.
Yes. The first domain that I ever sold, I can't mention it, but the first domain I ever did, well, not sell myself, but broker, I should say, is a commercial that I see weekly.
What?
I see it weekly. And the first time I saw it, I was like, oh, I did that, Like,
wow.
I did that. It was great. It was just, it's a good feeling knowing that you gave that person a home, or you gave that name, or you helped somebody start their business, or you helped somebody brand something. And that's what keeps me going. It's a hard job, because you have to, especially when you have something like LA.com, you have to do your homework. You have to find that right person. But the challenge in finding that is great. As you know, with, top shelf brandables.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Finding that brand for someone is great.
Yeah, and then when you see that product, it's something to be proud of. So after you've gone through that research process and you've created your database of potential buyers, what do you encounter when you finally get someone on the phone who wants to discuss this? Do they usually understand or know, all about domains, or, what's the first thing you have to do with them?
When you find a seller who is interested in the domain, the one thing you have to do is you have to provide to them a vision. The same thing when buyers come to me, you have to ask them what their vision is. But when you're selling somebody a domain like LA, you have to present it in a way of, you weren't looking for this, but this is why this is so good for you. Or you have to present of the opportunities and the vision that they could have by owning something like this. And that's sales in general, is giving a reason why somebody needs to purchase whatever it is that you're selling. Right. But with domains, it's a lot different, because it's an intellectual property. It's something online. It's not something that, when somebody has a name that they want to be, they will research it and find it. When you have a name like LA.com, you have to say, this is why this would help you.
Right.
This is why you need to rebrand. Right. This is why you need to have this. So, and that's what's great about domain names, is there are so many rebrandable things out there, but presenting that and getting that to them on the phone, sometimes people are like,
yeah,
the idea is great, but no.
Yeah, and it's like an education, so to speak. You're basically teaching them, and I'm coming at this from the brand perspective. Your name basically tells your customer everything they need to know about you. Either you're a high-end
Right.
business, low-end business, what you offer, what you serve, what you sell, so I can understand how when you go to a potential buyer, you might have to basically put that vision in front of them, tell them why, this name might be the best name for you or a better brand for you. So what about value? Do they typically have an understanding of how much that name should cost, or are they usually gobsmacked by the price?
It depends on who you're contacting, because I've contacted investors or portfolio holders and said, hey, this would be a great opportunity for you, for your portfolio, for your business, for your, whatever. I mean, they could be a multi-million-dollar company, and they're used to spending a lot of money on domains. They're used to spending a lot of money on, marketing, advertising. I mean, Super Bowl commercials, you name it.
Yeah.
And so you're offering them something. So there's going to be the, yes, we're just not interested. And then there's going to be the, you're out of your mind. There's no way we're spending that. That's, half our marketing budget for the year, or, whatever the case may be, or we don't have that worked into our budget. Give us a call next year, or, maybe we'll think about it in the future. You're like, well, this may not be here for the future. So
Yeah.
You have to present with the price. You have to let them see the value. And that's the hard part.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the education part of, you have to present domains that have sold recently, or, comparables that are listed for sale currently. So you have to present the value over the actual price.
So you're completely educating them 100%. That can be a challenge, I'm sure. Before we continue, let's take a moment to find out what's on the top shelf over at Brand.bar. We have ResumeCube.com. This would be a great brand for any leading resume, job, or recruitment business or website. DiveLounge.com. Build your new beach or poolside lounge or bar with this highly brandable and easily remembered domain. JuiceKick.com. Give your new health business, product, or service a kick with this catchy and versatile name. GeniusCompany.com. We'll just keep this short and sweet. Only a genius would start their company with such a great brand. WannaExtract.com. This would be a perfect brandable name for the marijuana, cannabis, oils, and cosmetics industry. If you'd like more information about the domains shown here, visit us at www.brand.bar. If you'd like to promote your brandable domain name here, send us an email to promote@brand.bar. So, for those watching, can you help us out, make it so that we can be a little more successful, and just teach us or give us some tips as to how we might go about pricing our own domains?
Sure. Pricing your domains can be a little bit difficult sometimes. You have to think of it as online real estate. You could go to Zillow.com and you could price a house and say, okay, well, the one next door to it is a lot, is comparable. It's got a little bit more upgrades or whatever. So with domains, you have to figure it as online real estate. The 2 letters, the 1 words, those are all beachfront property kind of things. So it's going to have a higher value. Now, putting a specific price on it, that's where you get to the point where it's a little bit hard. So you want to look at comparables. You want to say, okay, well, this 2-letter has this public price that it sold for, or this 1 letter sold for this. So you can look at comparables and see what the market value is. But all in all, it's going to come down to what the domain is worth to you along the lines of market value. So even if I say, okay, well, this domain is worth, $25,000, it could be worth $75,000 because you're like, wait, I've trademarked this domain. Or I've added market value to this domain because it used to have a business tied to it, and I've had this domain for 20 years, so it's got good Google rankings, etc. There's a lot of different ways that you can price out a domain. Do your homework on it, look at comparables, DN sale price, use Estabot for getting some sort of idea of where to start from. There's a lot of online places you can look. Look at the auctions, see what domains have sold for. That'll give you a better idea of how to price your domain.
And I think I spoke with you about this before too. Some people also place value based on what their future plans or goals are, right, with regard to that domain.
Yeah, so you'll get, so like when I'm working on behalf of a buyer and I contact a seller and I say, okay, well, we have $500 for this domain name. Well, that seller could be like, well, I bought this domain 9 years ago and I'm going to use it for my business. I haven't started that business yet, but that's what my passion, that's what my dream is. So what is it going to cost my buyer to buy your passionate dream from you? What is it going to cost for you to sell your dream? So that's another thing, because domains are very emotional to some people.
I have that same thing that happens to me. I have some names in my portfolio right now that every time I see it, I'm thinking, this is going to be this someday, or as soon as I get time, I'm going to build this into this. So I get what you're saying. It totally happens like that.
What would it cost for me to buy one of those dreams?
Exactly. That's right. So what about some tips on how we can find or contact those potential buyers?
When I'm looking at, I mean, I have an advantage with having a lot of domain portfolios in close contact with me. We have customers with GoDaddy. They're kind of in our, our GoDaddy circle of, we have portfolio holders, we have investors, we have, we have corporations, businesses. I mean, that's one way that I could find, hey, we have, this domain name that we're going to research for a buyer. But in the end, you have to, you research the name, you find similar names. That's how you're going to get a potential buyer. Do your homework, look through Google, look through LinkedIn, create a database. It's a lot easier to get in touch with sellers than it is to get in touch with buyers. I will say that.
I bet. Do you do more calls than you do emails?
Yes and no. It depends. It depends on the situation. We try to do a lot of phone calls. I'm probably the worst one when it comes to phone calls. I prefer email. But I do. I make a lot of phone calls, but I send out a lot of emails because I like to keep that paper trail of, hey, I contacted you on this date or I attempted contact. And if I don't hear from somebody, then I will pick up the phone. I mean, I pick up the phone all the time and talk to people. When you have your database of when you find who your potential buyers are, you shoot out an email, and if you don't hear anything, then you pick up the phone, or you may pick up the phone depending on, if it's a high-value domain, you pick up that phone. You call them. If it's something that is, okay, this is, a couple $100, I will send an email, or I'll, wait to see if there's a response. So it depends on the situation, on how many phone calls you do attempt, if it's a buyer or seller. But phone is really important. I'm the worst in our department for it, I will say that, but yeah.
Well, everyone has their method that they're the best at. So, there's nothing wrong with that. Now, I know that I must have exhausted you by now with all of these questions, but just a few. Give us just a few do's and a few absolute don'ts of negotiation.
Okay. One major do is to ask questions. When you have a buyer and you have somebody who says, Renee, I want you to go get this domain for me. What is it worth when you're educating a buyer? So that's the thing, is you have to ask questions, you have to educate them, you have to find out what their vision is, how strong is their vision. You have to know, by getting this domain name, what is it going to do to your business? What is it going to do to, help you grow? Is it going to, be an easy radio-friendly name that you're going after, or are you going after something just because it's within your budget? You want to present their vision to show the value. So that's one thing when you're talking to a buyer. Another thing is don't assume. Don't ever assume anything. Don't assume that your buyer doesn't have the budget. Don't assume that your seller is going to, price this at hundreds of thousands of dollars because you think it's a good domain. I had one customer that I was working with that it was a special situation where we contacted the seller, and the buyer wanted to have a conference call with the seller. He wanted to present his vision to the seller because, again, it was a seller who had a vision for the domain, didn't do anything with it, and the buyer says, okay, well, can I talk to the seller? Can you make that connection? So I set up a phone call, made the connection with them, and we had offered kind of I wouldn't say a low ball offer, but it was probably a mid-range offer. And I kind of went over with the seller, hey, this is what we're going to offer you. And he's like, okay, well, I'll keep it around that range for you. We ended up having the buyer and the seller had a good conversation. They talked about it. The seller says, okay, Renee, thanks for letting me talk to them. I'll call you back. He calls me back about an hour later and he says, so did you know that your buyer just recently received, funding and grants for such and such? I did not do my homework. My seller did their homework. Yeah. So I assumed my buyer only had so much in their budget. I didn't know that they had this grant and this information, but my seller did their homework. Now, because he had said he would keep the price, within a certain range, he agreed to that, even though he could have said, well, I did my homework, I understand this domain is worth more, I can probably sell it for more, but he kept with that. So don't ever assume that your buyer doesn't have the budget, and don't ever assume that your seller's not willing to negotiate. Those are the main do's and don'ts. Research, find the vision, and don't assume. Don't assume anything.
So research is a definite do. Communication, definitely do. And absolutely do not make assumptions.
No, do not. Never, ever make an assumption.
Okay, so before we go, though, Renee, I want to say this. I already know why I am going to reach out and get in touch with you immediately. But for anyone else who's watching, why should a domain investor choose GoDaddy's aftermarket domain buy service?
Well, in the domain buy service, we have 10 brokers. We have 10 really, really strong brokers, and we have a strong, passionate, intelligent manager who pushes us to, exceed. He pushes us every day. GoDaddy has a really good reputation for brand recognition. We minimize the risk for you when you are looking for your dream name, or you say, I want to sell my name, then you come to us. We understand the value. We understand what goes into buying, into selling. We understand the auction marketplace. We understand that there's going to be somebody who comes along and they're going to try to offer so much for this domain when it comes down to it. I mean, there's so many aspects of being in the domain market that being at GoDaddy, we sit next to our Premier Services team, and we talk to domain investors. We talk to portfolio holders. We work, hand in hand with our sister partner company, Afternic. We have so much at our fingertips that we can find buyers. We have connections through domain buy service, through privacy. We minimize the risk when it comes to all of this. I mean, we just have a really, really good, strong team who does nothing but broker domains all day long. That's all we do. You ask me about any sort of hosting, DNS, any of that stuff that goes with it? I don't know. But I can't tell you what domains are worth.
There you go. So it's experience and resources. Those are the two things that stuck out for me 100%. That experience that you guys all have and the resources at your fingertips to really make it, happen.
Yes. We have a really, really, really good team. any broker that is in our domain buy service, they all are very tenured, very educated, very experienced. They're more than happy to help you. Their customer service is out of this world. I mean, we're GoDaddy. Our customer service is always on par. But in the domain buy service, I mean, we're great.
I've only had the very best in customer service over at GoDaddy. Thank you so much, Renee. I so appreciate you coming on and chatting with me this afternoon. It's been like a fount of knowledge. That's you. Thank you so much.
No problem, Angela. Thanks for having me. It's been great. You're fun to chat with.
Now, keep that in mind when I call and ask you to come on with me again. Okay, so you have a great day, and we'll talk again soon.